Mia's listening, so we're going to move to that first one in the classroom tonight early with Bobby Sue and Travis Teletochi. So Bobby and Travis, do you have a question? And for those also with questions, just go ahead and have those prepared, and you can cut and paste them into the window. While that question is coming, let me pose a question for you two. Chris, you mentioned social media being revolutionary, and I agree. I think the technology, the capability it gives us, but people often criticize the dumbing down of America or the world in terms of now we can only communicate in 140-character sound bites, and we can't think or write in longhand. We can't write a book anymore. So I maintain the tweet is nothing new. It dates back to the early printing press, the penny press, Ben Franklin. I mean, how long is a headline? How long is a subhead?
Yeah. And
headline writers have, for decades had to write in 140-character size tweets. So I don't think that's new. Can you comment on whether you think it's new or not?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's new, and I think the people that say that there's dumbing down of America and that it's being fragmented are in large part the guys that are from big media, the guys that are annoyed that people aren't just watching their commercials, that aren't sitting there drooling as the commercial is running, that have a DVR in their hand, a laptop in their lap, an iPad in their other hand, and maybe their iPhone is in their back pocket. And those are really the only people that I currently hear it from, because everybody else now is starting to figure it out. Maybe when I first went to Marist, people were like, oh, yeah, this is ridiculous. Everybody's head is down in their laptop, but they're realizing that, the ability to create buzz, the ability to, articulate yourself in less than 140 characters. And frankly, there are studies that say that the tweets that perform the best are less than 100 characters because it allows for other people to comment on it, to add a hashtag, to, write something around the 140 characters. That's much more difficult than the blathering on a national news network, and they know it, which is why I joke when I sit there across from Greg Kelly and he says, and he's complaining, everybody has their head down, they're looking at an iPad. Now, if I was snarky enough and foolish enough to bite the beautiful hand that feeds me when I get these television appearances, I would say, really? That's interesting coming from a TV guy. He's complaining that somebody's looking down at an iPad? Really? You're telling me that what's happening on social media is dumbing people down, but what you do on Good Day New York is so enriching to people's lives? I think it's ridiculous. I think that when people have the ability to have access to what they're truly passionate about and what they have this fervent need to express themselves, that's beautiful. When NASA says, I'm gonna crowdsource an answer. NASA did this. They did their own study internally. They figured out the answer to a question, for example, in like 6 months. And then they posted the question to their crowdsourced hobbyists. These are people that would work on NASA problems in their free time. And that group figured out the problem in something like 2 or 3 months, and it was the right answer. So NASA just wanted to double check it and just to figure it out. I mean, that's revolutionary. It's taking former problems, former things that are absolutely, paramount problems, and making them utterly trivial, making them ridiculous, making them silly problems. That they're no longer problems because many hands make for light work, right? So the ability to have that reach and the ability to touch people that have similar interests through the power of social media, that's a beautiful thing. The people that brush it off are the people that don't understand it like anything else. It's ignorance.
Right. It's what we call the wisdom of crowds. The collective knowledge is always more accurate than even the expertise of a single scientist. So that's a great point. Let me go backwards. I've got 3 questions here. I'll put 2 of them together. Nia and Bobby Sue and Travis have combined for 1 question. And we'll get to Jerry Valentin Cruz. So I guess for the audio part here, you spoke about the buy-in from supervisors, and any suggestions on how to get the buy-in from those who still think social media is a fad and just don't understand it?
Well, I would just show results of those companies or organizations that have used social media. I mean, we talk about it in my class. I still teach an undergrad class at Marist, and we have examples of this every week. I mean, look at the buzz created by Oreo during the Super Bowl when they had their team right there and put out this tweet with a pic, that you can still dunk in the dark. The buzz that created, and that didn't cost, yes, it cost time of the people perhaps in that room, but you compare that to the cost of a 30-second Super Bowl spot, which may have done well, but may have flopped. They created their own free buzz. I think you can take a look. Bobby Sue is in fundraising. You take a look at the organizations that have learned, and still many of them need to learn how to do this, who have learned how to use social media of various types to bring in money. The disasters that occur in the Red Cross, for example, have been very, very good at that. Where a simple text message of 5 numbers by one individual will raise $10 for an individual. Multiply that by how many millions of individuals, that brings in how many tens of millions of dollars. We saw it with Sandy, for example. We saw it in Haiti. You can show people how others are using the technology to achieve a goal, advance a cause, etc. And those that don't do it are going to be left behind.
Let me compare and contrast, Tim, because I can't help but think, here's Chris, who is an entrepreneur who heads his own agency, deals with clients who obviously, Chris, are coming to you because they want something, whereas Tim, you've been corporate, you were in private education, and I know from my own experience, sometimes the people who are slowest to adopt new knowledge are educators. We're very safe in our classroom. And what was it like at Marist, let's say, or what's it like at organizations like Marist to convince the leadership that they need to step out from behind their comfort zone and try new things? I mean, I can't help but think of the news that Harvard is making right now with some of the missteps with how they've treated email. What about convincing educators and presidents of colleges that we need to get out there and use this new technology? And Chris, how does that compare with your clients?
Frankly, it always takes one person to want to sort of poke a hole in the universe. And I'll give you an example. By virtue of the first time that Timian was gracious enough to invite me to speak at Marist, I kind of caught the bug of speaking to college students and started proactively reaching out to colleges and said, hey, I'll speak for free. And then after I started speaking for free, they started to say, hey, we're going to pay you. And I said, oh, that's really fun. And I started speaking to undergraduate students and executive MBA students, and then that kind of rolled into speaking to the full athletic department and 700 kids in one room. And one of the times I spoke to an executive MBA group at Loyola, my alma mater, and when I spoke to them, I must have done something right, because there was a group of about 35 executive MBA students. One of the girls that wasn't even in the room heard about the seminar that I gave. She worked at Constellation Energy, not just a Fortune 500, they're a Fortune 200 company. She said, gee, this is really interesting. We'd love to learn more about social media. We have something called Sales University every year down in Orlando. We get together. We get 300 of our sales executives together. We want to shake things up. We know that social media is interesting. We have no idea how it would apply for a Fortune 200. Will you come down and keynote? I was able to get an audience of 300 of these sales executives, spent an hour, gave my keynote, and the walls in the room shook because I took examples from the individual executives in the room. Now, there was a lot of collusion leading up to that. It's a Fortune 200, so I didn't give my normal spiel. When Tim invited me to come to Marist, he probably didn't know that the title of my presentation was "How the F is Social Media Going to Get Me a Job?" when I posted it up on the screen. So people realize that I tend to do some presentations like that. So there was collusion, and we discussed who was going to be in the room, their backgrounds about being in the room, and what was important to them, and some previous sales training that they had, and how they could map social media to what they had done. And blew them all away. We had 2 breakout sessions. I was blocked out of the wall, like could not get out of the room, and I'm now doing a roadshow follow-up, flying around the country to train all of their sales professionals. Sometimes it takes just one person. Phone. Sometimes it takes just one person to be interested enough and to say, all right, we're going to have this person, and maybe it's somebody like me, to come in and speak, or even just show them like a YouTube video of a guy like Gary Vaynerchuk who's keynoting the Westchester Digital Summit, or even like one of my silly TV segments, to just have people realize that there's something else out there and to get people thinking. And companies have these opportunities. Companies have these, you know, if it wasn't for Constellation having the sort of sales university and an opportunity to bring in somebody that doesn't think really the way they have thought for the past however many years, none of that would have happened.
Yeah, how about your experience?
Well, I think, Mark, one of the breakthroughs came, and Bobby Sue will remember this one, September 2009, we were getting ready to make a major announcement, and the announcement ended up being that we got the largest gift in the history of the college, a $65 million gift. We ended up going out on Twitter, and you know, we have Marist Monday, now it creates a community on Mondays. So I was asking people to tune in on Wednesday at noon to hear what the big announcement was. And for a period of about 2 hours on the Tuesday before the announcement, Marist was actually a national trending topic on Twitter, which drew more people in to try to guess. And we probably had about 5,000 guesses as to what the big announcement was. You know, was Dennis Murray going to retire? Were they changing the name to Marist University? And it created a sense of buzz, and you know, and people, you know, commented on it. They really felt part of this community. And yeah, you know, there were some people who said, "Oh, whoop-de-doo, what's that going to do for students?" You know, or something like that. But I think the vast majority of the people who participated, you know, felt good about their alma mater. And I think we see it also in the changing nature of the Marist Facebook page over the years, where again, it's this whole sense of community. You see it in good times and in bad times. You know, you know, the sad times, for example, when the fire killed those students, people were coming to the Marist Facebook page to express their condolences to a community from literally people were writing in from all over the world. You know, when a student writes on the Marist Facebook page that, you know, she's excited because she got accepted, and somebody from admissions or another office writes back and said, "Yeah, we knew that. You know, yeah, we know you were accepted." So, you know, you create this going back and forth. And we actually, for the first couple of years that I was doing the Facebook page for Marist, I would get emails from students who said that they ended up applying to the school and decided to come to Marist because of the interactions on the Facebook page. That it wasn't just, you know, this monolithic institution, but it was a community of individuals who could have fun, share, care for one another, and that came across through social media. So, so how do you get, you know, somebody on top, a college president, professor, as a corporate CEO? Again, I think, you know, you go to them and say, look, this is what we've been able to do, and this is how we're able to get our message out directly. You know, and you piggyback that with other forms of media. I'm not saying you just do social media alone. You know, I still pitch stories to major media. You know, and it was great to see a hit in the New York Times. You know, great to see a hit even in the local Poughkeepsie Journal. But you do have to, and as the program is called, you know, you do have to integrate all of your marketing, your public relations, your advertising to communicate a message across all media. And I think for those in this class, and I say that particularly to, if I may use the term, younger members, which at my age means anybody under 40, you're expected to know this. And I say this in each of my classes. You're expected to know how to use social media to communicate, to build community, to get information out to people. And if you don't, you're not going to get hired for the next job. Because I hear that from current students, undergraduate students who are out there in the marketplace right now, and even though social media may not be a specific part of their job, almost to the person, they're being asked, how do you view the use of social media in communicating a message and building a community? So for those who aren't on it, and I still have students in my class, who were not on it, they're behind the competition when it comes time to look for a job.
Good, thank you. And make a good point. I can't help but think of how want ads have changed over just the last couple of years, and more entry-level jobs for social media managers for recent graduates. I want to go back to some questions. Jerry Valentin Cruz had a great question. Jerry's in the PR management class, and in fact, students in the Com 610 social media class had questions like Jerry's about the laws of copyright, trademark that protect our intellectual property on social media, but also perhaps restrict what we can do. I'm going to paste in a link to an NPR story that we talked about, and you can look at it later, but basically the contention of some lawyers are that things like Pinterest and TwitPic and sharing content on Facebook, even LinkedIn, is a violation of copyright because we're taking people's intellectual property without their permission and repackaging, redistributing, reshaping it. So could you address, Tim and Chris, what do you do for you and your clients to protect your brand, and what do you have to do to avoid stepping on other people's trademarks and copyright?
If I may start off, for me specifically, it's an important topic because I present so often, and I am, I guess, in a smaller version in the public eye more often. So when I'm speaking, I have a PowerPoint behind me. I pay for all of the images. What I had previously done was source the images, find the images on Flickr, find the images, wherever it was, and then credit a source, and that became much too arduous. And I just said, listen, I'm going to Shutterstock, and I'm just going to pay for the images outright so that I know that I can use them, and I'm not violating any sort of trademark. And I leverage lots of images for those presentations, and then I'm comfortable posting them on SlideShare, etc. When I do internal presentations, I can pull content from all over the place. The majority of the content that I post personally on my Pinterest page, frankly, is in violation because I do lots of media hits and lots of television appearances, and I am, by law, not supposed to be screen grabbing them. But I do it anyway, and then I post it on my YouTube account, and then I tweet them, and then I post it on Facebook. Now, the reason why I think I get away with that is because they don't pay me for those segments. There's a sort of quid pro quo where I'm allowed to use it as my marketing material and talk about it, whatever, and nobody's going to get too upset, and nobody's going to be too concerned about it. Now, that's me. I'm a small little grain of sand in the desert. When I speak with my clients, however, that's a very, very different beast. I'm working with clients everywhere from a Formula One driver to an author to a non-for-profit like Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and their interactions, specifically within Pinterest, need to be heavily monitored, need to be specifically centered around only content that they are generating on their own, and need to be curated and run up the flagpole via an internal definitive roadmap and process so they don't get into any trouble. And this is a very, very serious issue. The sort of trademark issue is a very big issue, especially for the images that are floating around Pinterest, and also any contests and sponsorships that are happening within social media are an issue as well. And there needs to be legal parameters around any of these sponsorships or contests because Facebook is abundantly clear that they don't want to be held accountable or liable for any of the contests that are happening within the social media, within the Facebook ecosystem. And that means sometimes things as simple as how many, whoever clicks like the most on this image wins something. That could potentially, in a court of law, be construed as a sweepstakes. Now, I don't discourage my clients from doing that, but I just make sure that I say, hey, listen, you could potentially get in trouble for this. If you want to hire a lawyer, I know a good one. It'll cost you $10,000. We'll put together some legal parameters, some fine print so that you don't get in trouble. And if they want to take my advice, great. If they don't, I gave them my advice. But it is front and center because of the manner in which this information passes so freely. And because as time goes on, people were becoming much more liberal with how expeditiously they pass something without giving any credit or any concern to trademark, it's also becoming much more and more difficult for these social networks to police it. So it is an issue. It does come up often, and it's very important for my clients.